we're going to stay very high level. Before we get into the meat of what we're going to talk about, quick recap, right? We're going over this idea of chatbots and AI and how ultimately this stuff is going to blend more and more with people. And however that looks to you, whatever you can envision, ultimately it's going to be a fusion straight into the body and brain with the combination of nanotech and genetic manipulation. But that's outside the scope of this discussion. We looked at neuromarketing, neuroscience, and marketing and advertising the last time we did a breakdown on this stuff. And we looked at Nielsen and Effectiva and some of the patents that are associated with looking at your nervous system and your brain waves and your emotional response and your physiologic responses, like how much you sweat when you look at stimuli, what your eyes doing when you look at stimuli, what's going on with your heart rate and your breath rate and, blood pressure. And there's more and more that can be measured with things like a smartphone. And I'm going to show you some projects that the government is working on, United States government, specifically Darpa and Iarpa tonight. And more specifically tied into smartphones and IoT sensors. And I've got a lot of tabs up, so we're just going to take it nice and easy and show you this partnership that exists. And in my view, this partnership between companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and on and on and on and on, in addition to marketing and advertising companies like Nielsen and Effectiva and others, create this environment that allows the government to basically circumvent a lot of your civil rights. And just my opinion. But you sign away your rights under the terms of service in order to use something like Facebook or Twitter or an Apple iPhone or whatever. They collect information on you, straight up. They do. So we're on episode 118, and we're looking at Iarpa, and we're going to start with Iarpa collection and then start looking at biometrics. And we're going to go back and forth between some of this information that you can find on INTERNETdotORG. And this is Google Radar that looks at all of your biometrics and sensor fusion. So it takes all of the sensors that are in a phone, and Google has the ability to take all of that sensor data and fuse it in with the radar signatures and create very complex profiles of you, right? Reflection signals of radar indicating a physical characteristic of a target, which is extracted. Radar features the sensors activated to provide a supplemental sensor data. So they're putting all this stuff together, and it's all in a nice, sexy form factor known as a cell phone. In addition to that, we're going to look at Wi-Fi and ultra wideband a little bit, because they can understand everything. They can understand your speech. They can understand handwriting. They can understand your typing. They understand numbers of people in crowds. They can understand your heart rate, respiration, emotion, everything, using things like Wi-Fi and ultra wideband, which again exist in modern telecommunications. In addition to that, we'll also come back and cross-reference wearable tech, watches, camera technology, earphones and earbuds, and antennas. And this patent really kind of encapsulates it nicely. And what this is an older patent. It's an apparatus for remotely determining information as to a person's emotional state. And in order to do that, they use ultrasound, light, and electromagnetics, and they beam directed energy at you, whether it be energy in the form of sound or energy in the form of electromagnetics, be it radio waves, millimeter waves, or even light, also electromagnetic. They beam it at you, and then they can look at the reflections and or the variations after it's bounced off your body, absorbed into your body, etc. And they can understand things like, are you lying? Are you excited? Are you sad? All of those things. And Iarpa, which is underneath the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, right? It's the 17 or 18 intelligence agencies have plenty of programs that specifically deal with biometrics and sensors. So collection is a no pun intended, a collection of different programs, research programs that comprise ways to gather intelligence, mostly through software. And so the handoff between, or the partnership more or less, between DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and Iarpa, Intelligence Advanced Research Project Agency, is this fusion or this hybriding of hardware and software. Both agencies, Iarpa and DARPA, work in both hardware and software. But from what I found, Iarpa likes software a lot. DARPA likes hardware and software. So we're going to look at both today. Collection, this overarching umbrella of gathering intelligence with sensors, right? The goal of collection research is to dramatically improve the value of collected data from all sources by developing new sensor and transmission technologies, new collection techniques that more precisely target desired information, and a means for collecting information from previously inaccessible sources. In addition, Iarpa pursues new mechanisms for combining information gathered from multiple sources, so data fusion, to enhance the quality, reliability, and utility of collected information. So the areas of interest, right? Innovative tools for identifying or creative novel sources of new information, sensor technologies, methods for combining different measurements or sensors to improve performance and accuracy of systems, and on and on and on. Tagging and tracking, location techniques, innovative approaches to gain access to denied environments. What does that mean? Denied environments. Electrically small antennas and other advanced radio frequency RF concepts. Oh, we've looked at some of those. We've looked at a few in great detail, and we've looked at a pretty wide variety of RF technologies, and we will continue to do so because, for example, your Google radar, which comes in standard now in Pixel phones, radar-based biometric recognition, basically understands everything about you. The radar field can put out a three-dimensional field, 3D volume, so a cube, a sphere, a cylinder, fan, cube, cylinder, right? Or a surface, right? On a surface applied to human tissue, could be through human tissue based on the frequency they're using. Receives reflections from human tissue in 3D volume, such as skin, bone, or heart muscle. Provides biometric data in 3 dimensions, such as the temperature of a person's arm at multiple points in and around the arm. And this is just electromagnetic. This is not even a camera. It's not even a camera. So radar is a huge deal. It's a big deal. Anyway, we're going to look at some of these Iarpa programs. I picked some of them out, and we're going to look at them. But before we go there, I want to show you this document from DARPA. This is a broad agency announcement from DARPA, and this contract is HR 00111 7S as in Sam 0032. Warfighter analytics using smartphones for health, known as WASH. I'm going to say that again. Warfighter analytics using smartphones for health. Let's see at a high level what this is about. The goal of the Warfighter Analytics program, right, Smartphones for Health, the WASH program, is to develop algorithms that enable continuous and real-time assessment of the warfighter by leveraging data that is passively and unobtrusively captured from any and all cell phone sensors. Passively and unobtrusively captured information. Extracting information from any and all cell phone sensors. This was back in 2017, I believe. WASH will assess combat mission readiness by passively linking the warfighter's behavior to their physiological and cognitive state. Now, these are the same terms that are used in neuroscience and neuromarketing to understand physiological and cognitive responses to things like advertisements. And this is the fascism piece I'm talking about. What is useful from an intelligence perspective or a warfighter perspective is also useful to make money, to extract money, or to incentivize consumers to spend money one way versus another, to be able to understand that, to therefore then manipulate it. Proposed research, this is for the WASH program, warfighter analytics, using any and all sensor information from a smartphone, should investigate innovative approaches that enable revolutionary advances in science, devices, or systems. Specifically excluded is research that primarily results in evolutionary improvements to the existing state of practice, research that focuses on active interaction of the user with the cell phone, or research that requires the use of additional or other devices beyond the cell phone. So let's break that down. Specifically excluded from this project, they're looking for new innovative ways to passively and unobtrusively capture information from any and all cell phone sensors. And so what they're saying is excluded are traditional or currently understood methods of active interaction of the users with the cell phone. So you're actively engaged. You've got the thing in your hand and you're staring at it. You're pressing buttons, or you're scrolling, or you're watching YouTube, right? And the common things that we understand that are useful, and we're going to look at a lot of them today through Iarpa, is going to be things like your camera and your microphone, understanding facial recognition, pupil dilation, eye tracking, voice print analysis, standard, basic stuff, right? It's already proven technology. This program, WASH, Warfighter Analytics using smartphones for health, is looking to go above and beyond that. So understanding warfighter or people while they're not actively using their cell phone, through extracting information from the cell phone sensors while they're not necessarily engaged with the cell phone, to understand physiology and cognitive function of a soldier or a person from a cell phone, not peripheral equipment, from a cell phone. So what does that look like? If the camera is put away, if your cell phone's in a pouch, you're not using it, warfighter, right? They're going to stow it. It's going to be in a pouch. The microphone may not be as good. The camera may not be as good. So what's left? What is left? All of the other sensors are left. The magnetometer, the gyroscope, the electric field generators for proximity sensing, near field communication, your electromagnetic antennas, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phone, and on and on and on. There are others, but those are primary focus items right there. And I say that to you, again, we go back to look at what's coming out in the consumer space to understand what's available in something like a cell phone. And all you have to do is look, for example, at Google radar and gesture sensing, which is standard now in their Pixel phones, Google Pixel phones. This technology is not exclusive to Google. There are other companies that are developing radar-based sensing for biometric recognition and to do things like fuse together data analytics with all of the other sensors in a phone. This is the world in which we live. So biometrics, right? Identifying features can include various biometric identifiers such as the size and shape and ratio of sizes of cartilage, right? Cartilage structures, bone structures for the person or a portion of the person, such as a person's hand. These are just examples, right? May also be associated with a device worn by the person, such devices having a unique or difficult to copy reflection. So things that you wear, you have a unique wedding ring, 14 karat gold, 3 diamonds, which reflects radar in a particular manner. Do you carry the same set of keys with you? That's different than your neighbor's set of keys. Glasses, a favorite necklace, Same shoes, work shoes every day, same wallet. You get the idea. Sensor-based applications, Google Radar, standard in consumer devices now, can include biometric recognition, physiologic monitoring, and motion identification. Biometric recognition application may use sensor data or radar data. 3D map of a skeletal structure of a user's face and color image from a red, green, and blue sensor to confirm the user's identity as another example. And this thing goes on and on and on. It understands motion such as your tremors. It can detect a user's breathing pattern with radar and motion features, breath noises recorded by acoustic sensors, aka a microphone, heat signatures of exhaled air captured by the infrared sensor. So that Face ID thing that lets you log into your phone while you're sitting there looking at your device, it literally can measure your breath. Heat signature of exhaled air captured by the infrared sensor. And it can capture more than that. They can actually do analytics and understand what's in the gaseous content of your breath, right? Like CO2 and other pollutants and whatnot that you may inhale or exhale. This stuff is super sophisticated. Radar-based authentication. If you haven't looked at this site, particularly this page, Google Radar and Gesture Sensing, it's underneath the wireless tab, INTERNETdotORG, under Google Radar. It's remarkable what they can do with radar. Absolutely remarkable. So I think that's all we're going to look at. This is a very long document. Here we go. This might be a little more useful information here. The warfighter analytics using smartphones for health. Darpa will use data collected from cell phone sensors to enable novel algorithms that conduct passive and continuous real-time assessment of the warfighter or person. Abstractly, WASH will extract physiological signals, which may be weak and noisy, that are embedded in the data obtained through existing mobile device sensors. And only as examples: accelerometer, a screen, a microphone. Now, notice here that they say that a screen is a sensor. What does that mean? I thought all a screen did was just project light so I can see what I'm looking at. Now, how would a screen be a sensor? I'll let you ponder that, but I can tell you with certainty that it is. And I'll give you a clue. There's a reason why when you touch your phone, it knows that you're looking for a W instead of an E or an R or a T when you're texting, right? It understands that you want to select a particular tile, an app, versus another app, even though they're side by side on your phone. They can do that because they have grids basically built into these things that emit capacitive fields. Some emit ultrasonic fields, and it puts your phone in a grid-like pattern. And if you can imagine for a moment, you've got two thumbs holding a phone that's approximately, 4 inches wide? And you have the whole alphabet, the whole keyboard there, and you can type very, very fast, text very, very fast, and it understands where you're pressing. They emit electric fields. Those electric fields project above the screen. So if you have your phone facing you on your body, those electric fields can measure your body. They interact with your body. And I'll show you as time goes on, capacitive sensors that do things like extract bioelectric information, understand your heartbeat, and extract your brainwaves from capacitive field sensors. And if you don't think it's possible, I can show you here underneath earbuds. You go to INTERNETdotORG and find bioenergy interfaces, mobile wearable devices, and go down to earbuds, and you have an EEG monitor with capacitive electrodes. And what I'm trying to illustrate for you here is that capacitive electric fields, which your screen has, that enables you to touch it, and the phone knows what you want to do with it. through the capacitive fields, the capacitive structures, the conductive elements that are built into the face of the phone so that it emits electric fields that your thumbs and your hands interact with, which in turn allows the phone to understand that you want to type a Q instead of a W, instead of an E, instead of an R or a T or a Y. QWERTY, a QWERTY keyboard. Versus a Facebook tile or a Gmail tile or a Twitter tile. And it's done with capacitive sensing. So capacitive electrodes, in this case, they're built into an earbud. It can monitor your brainwaves. And it's just an example. What I'm telling you here is that this program that's looking at alternative ways to utilize technology that's built into a cell phone, to utilize that technology as a sensor in new, creative, novel ways. And as an example, in this program scope, they talk about a screen. So I just spent 5 minutes explaining to you one way in which a screen can be used to understand a soldier's physiological condition and their cognitive condition based on a screen. What is built into a screen so that a cell phone functions the way we understand it to function. And I'll do a whole show on capacitive sensing at some point, but not now. It's remarkable. The technology is amazing, man. It really is. So such extraction and analysis done on a continuous basis, ongoing, real time, all the time, will be used to determine current health status and identify latent or developing health disorders. Now, remember the 60-day stand down and the purge that's going to undergo within the military for looking for domestic extremism, right? Ideological extremism. Don't you think that they would be utilizing this kind of stuff, right? Using something like a cell phone that every soldier is going to have to really, really dial in on what it is that makes them tick, to see if they're going to be willing to, for example, fire on American citizens, go door to door for gun confiscation, or perhaps be likely to go, you know what, fuck you. I'm not doing that. It's against the Constitution. I swore an oath to the Constitution, not to you. It's to the Constitution. That's the kind of stuff that they want to understand about the soldiers, so they know which ones are useful, so to speak, and which ones are not. WASH will develop algorithms and techniques for identifying both known indicators of physiological problems such as disease, illness, or injury. Think about this. Using your cell phone, which we all have, using your cell phone, nothing else, just the cell phone. That's a specific parameter of this project. Just a cell phone, a smartphone, to understand indicators of physiological problems such as disease, illness, or injury passively without the user engaging in the cell phone. Oh, I got shot, or I broke my leg, or I ripped my knee, jumping out of an airplane, or rappelling out of a helicopter. They don't have to pull out their phone and self-report using their thumb saying, I hurt myself, I need help, right? They want this to be done passively. The phone, as a mobile communications device that's nearby on the body of the soldier, to be able to understand this stuff in real time. Things like disease, illness, or injury without engaging or interacting with the phone in real time, all the time. As well as, this is important, as well as deviations from the war fighter's micro behaviors that could indicate such problems. Now, what does that mean? Micro behaviors. In order to understand deviations in micro behaviors, they have to monitor your behavior with some amount of frequency and with some detail to be able to understand a micro change to your behavior, a micro behavior change that can indicate such problems. It's also expected that additional digital biomarkers of physiological problems will be identified during the research through the combination of big data analytics and medical ground truth. So that's the hardware piece. Now we're going to start digging into the software piece. Novel biometric signatures, and I'm going to point you to these dates here to let you know just how far along we are. This is 2010 when they did an open agency announcement, and 2010 the responses were due, and this program, or the responses for this program, are closed. Typically these programs last for 3 to 4 years, sometimes they're longer. Normally it's a I should say a 2 to 4 year program. Typically they're 4. Novel biometric signatures back in 2010. We're going to go through the last roughly decade of what the intelligence agencies have been looking for as innovative and novel, new. And I just want you to keep in mind big tech. I want you to keep in mind groups like Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, and Amazon. There are others. Those are American companies. The Chinese variation of all of that would be Huawei. There are others in China as well, ZTE, China Telecom, and on and on and on. But their hierarchies are structured differently. A lot of this stuff is all underneath an umbrella of telecom, and ours are diversified, right? Because we have this idea of, private ownership and all this other nonsense that just really clouds over the same thing. They're two heads of the same snake, so to speak. And it's fascism. It's fascism is really what it is. So big tech, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, Apple. Biometrics. And I just got done showing you that Darpa is looking for cell phone sensing in a way that's passive, that the user doesn't have to be actively engaging with the phone to do things like understand illness, disease, injury, micro behavior changes, physiologic responses, and cognitive activity. Cognitive. What is that? What are you thinking about? How are you processing information? How do you reason? What's going on inside your brain? With just a cell phone. No peripheral headphones, no watch, no special hardened military adapter that you're going to, put on. None of it. It's just a cell phone. So biometrics, intelligence advanced research projects, IARPA, part of the ODNI, the intelligence apparatus, often selects its research efforts through the broad agency announcement process, blah, 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 blah. There's not much to this other than, since 9/11, the intelligence community's need for reliable biometric recognition performance has expanded beyond today's access control and verification applications that operate within tightly controlled conditions. IARPA's Smart Collection Office is seeking innovative ideas and concepts for the advancement of standoff biometric technologies. Standoff biometric technologies. IARPA's objective is to maintain a high degree of recognition accuracy while pushing the range of acquisition as far as possible and requiring minimal cooperation from the subject. Pushing the range as far as possible, how far away can they be, and sense your biometrics to identify you as you versus somebody else without your compliance. Without your compliance. The emphasis is on classifying and recognizing unique human phenomenology, anatomical, physiological, and or behavioral. Anatomical, right? What's the distance from your elbow to your wrist? Your hips to your ankle? How large is your heart? Your brain? Your balls? Your boobs? Physiological, right? Do you get stressed when you look at fill in the blank? Do you get happy when you're engaged in fill in the blank? Do you get sad when fill in the blank? Physiological, physical changes that can be measured via your nervous system, which goes back to what we were looking at, I think 2 shows ago, looking at the marketing companies and neuroscience and those partnerships with big tech, Google, China, Alibaba, Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, partner with neuroscience, neuromarketing companies to gather consumer sentiment, and they do it by measuring physiological and behavioral changes to stimuli, all under the guise of marketing and understanding return on investment for advertising and marketing and the presentation of content, any content. And that extends out into your environment when you're not engaged in your phone, with your phone, because your phone's still there. All of those software-based, hardware-based technologies still exist, even though you're not actively using your phone. And Darpa wants in on that through that WASH program that we spent a lot of time looking at. Biometrics, folks. Biometrics are the new, it's the new oil. It's the new gold. And you can't just quit your biometrics. Can't just throw away, it's not like, throwing away your ID or not using credit cards and only using cash. It's not like that. You can't necessarily alter your biometrics. Not all of them anyway. I'm sure you can train yourself to have different physiologic responses to things over a period of time. However, you're not going to grow a 6th finger. You're not going to make yourself taller or shorter. You're not going to change the color of your hair. At least not without, if you had access to hair dye, obviously you could. But if you didn't, your hair is going to grow. It's going to be whatever color it is. Same thing with your eyes. Same thing with the dimensions of your teeth, the size of your heart. Those things you can't change those things. Biometric signatures that may be acquired from significantly greater ranges than from today's commercially available biometrics technologies. This is back in 2010. This is smartphones were kind of coming into their own around that time. Iarpa is interested in novel biometric signatures that can be captured by non-contact methods, not involving immediate proximity to a sensor. Specific signatures that currently require close sensor proximity may be considered only if a reasonable technology development path exists to permit the acquisition of such signatures from significant ranges. For example, in excess of 50 meters, it's 150 feet away. While this particular program is not interested in addressing the fusion of biometrics, this is back in 2010, scientific approaches must include any technique necessary to ensure signatures of interest are being derived from human sources. Also not of interest are techniques or technologies that exploit face, ocular, including iris, which is your eye, and voice or speech biometrics modalities. So they're looking for biometrics that are beyond face and eye and voice recognition technologies. And there's not a lot of information specific to what it is that they are looking for with this program. Normally there's information off on the right-hand side, and I'll show you here in a minute. Here's another one. This was 2009, Biometric Exploitation, Science and Technology. This is known as BEST from Iarpa, right? BEST. Biometric Exploitation Science and Technology Program to significantly advance the state of the science for biometric technologies, technologies that are not of interest to the BEST program are contact type technologies such as fingerprint and palm identification, and ideas for product development or research that would primarily result in incremental evolutionary improvements to existing state of practice. So they want to, stated objective here, significantly advance the intelligence community's ability to achieve high confidence match performance, even when the features, the biometric features, right, are derived from a non-ideal data set, and significantly relax the constraints currently required to acquire high fidelity biometric signatures. So we'll look at this one briefly and we will continue to move forward. It's back in 2009, Biometric Exploitation, Science and Technology. This is their Proposers Day brief. So they're looking, let's see here. Here they are. They're classifying the current state of practice, right? Palm print, voice recognition. You got, it looks like a scanner of some type, and the fingerprint sensor. So program goals, right? Significantly advance the ability to achieve high confidence match performance on features derived from non-ideal data. And exploitation analysis in this particular program, what they're proposing: face recognition, ocular recognition, speaker recognition, and they're looking at finding new ways to get this information at distance. Remember, they said 50 meters, so 150 feet away. So likely with cameras and microphones. High fidelity, two-dimensional and three-dimensional fidelity. That's crazy. And these presentations, they get a little prettier as technology improves. But you can see here that this is really when this stuff is coming into its own. So smartphones are out, they're around. You've got complex computers that are now deployed everywhere. The flip phone has fallen away, and we're in smartphone land, right? Ocular recognition. Potential efforts of interest include ocular region that will enhance iris recognition performance using non-ideal data. Keep in mind, they want to do this at 150 feet away. Be able to understand, I ID you with your iris, which is the color part around your eye. You got the pupil in the middle, and you got the color part around your eye. That's your iris. At distances beyond, in excess of 150 feet away, to be able to ID you based on your iris. And you think, well, they don't have my iris. Well, yeah, they do. You cover your camera all the time? Nope. You ever use somebody else's phone? Was their camera covered? Probably not. You ever had your picture taken? Yeah. So it's done. It's these profiles are built. It's already done. And Amazon has huge contracts for biometric databases. So does Microsoft. For the government. They are the ones that manage the cloud infrastructure and the databases for the biometric files that they have on people either entering the country or in the country. Their official position is it's for DHS and Border Patrol and stuff like that. But you've got the TSA. And they're on the lookout for domestic extremism. Apparently, so is the military looking at themselves for domestic extremism. So all this stuff it's open game on the American citizen. Speaker recognition, right? It's back in 2009, excuse me. So a lot of this, you may be like, yeah, we already know this. Right? It's pretty well. This is how this stuff is developed. The government funds the research for it, and then off it goes, and it goes out into the commercial sector, and it's everybody gets to use it. Where you are the product. You're the product. Nothing is free. Multilingual speech, health variations, cold and fatigue. Be able to understand if you're feeling good or not using your microphone. You have your normal voice profile, and then you have variations. vocal tract aging, so they can tell as you get older, right? Vocal tract changes, speed and rate and style. All these things matter. You see this camera here? They're looking at you while you're looking at a screen or whatever. Let's move on. Project Odin. Now this one is a complex project and there's not a lot of information about it, which is, it's unfortunate because it's a crazy project. So Project Odin, the status is closed, but the dates over here are back in 2016, 2015. So the goal of Project Odin is to utilize presentation attack detection to identify known and unknown presentation attacks in a biometric collection system. Now, what the hell does that mean? What it means is that the biometric identification and the use of biometric identification is so proliferated that they're now spoofing biometrics. They're putting out false information. It's fake biometric news. So this program is designed to identify authenticity of biometric information. That's the overarching idea of this program. So a biometric PA, also commonly referred to as biometric spoofing, is a method which inhibits the intended operation of a biometric capture system, interfering with the recording of the true sample or identity of a biometric capturing system, ultimately preventing the subject from being correctly identified. Countermeasures to biometric collection. Interesting, isn't it? Whole program for that. Typical PAs utilize a prosthetic to conceal biometric signatures or present an alternative biometric signature. And I can give you a basic example of something in like a camera. There are software technologies that exist to do things like masking your biometric information while looking at a camera. Modifying a digital video signal to mask biological information. So this is a basic example of trying to cloud, shroud, remove, or replace, or alter, change biometric information that can be understood from a camera. You're staring at a camera, looking at a camera. Everybody's on Zoom now, right? Because we're all in lockdown and all that crap. Well, they know a lot about you. They can understand brain activity. They can understand your heart rate. They can understand blood pressure. They can understand emotional content, flushing of the skin, respiration. They can understand all that stuff just by looking at a camera, looking at you through the camera, and understand all those things about you. And they have a patent here that says that they can take all of that information and they can either mask it, they can insert other information like stock information over top of it, they can scramble it or alter the signal to it. Similar patents to that, a system and a method for generating and obfuscating an optical signal. All that means is something from a camera. That's from Huawei. And Cisco's got biometric masking. And I show you this because this Project Odin is specifically countering the technologies that are being developed to try to mask biometrics. So the intelligence group is looking at ways to either counter that, to counter the counter, or to identify, at a minimum, that it's not an accurate biometric extraction. So here we go. Existing technology in use primarily relies upon a human security presence to ensure the integrity of the process, and that PA is not being utilized. So what they're talking about is that it needs a human to actively look at this stuff. They want to automate it. And so this is where it gets crazy, going back to the electric fields and all this other stuff. So A need exists to capture more robust information from a biometric sample to identify or measure the likelihood of PAs. There needs to be an intelligent approach that can identify unknown presentation attacks based on a knowledge of what a true sample should look like, which is normalcy modeling for anomaly detection. And this is where, if they have this stuff turned on all the time and they have your baselines, they've got your baselines for what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what makes your pupils dilate. When you are focused on something, what does your signature look like? When you get bored or distracted, what does that signature change to? What does that signature look like? And it goes on and on and on. If they have the normalization, then they'll be able to understand with some degree of certainty when there is a change in your behavior or your physiology, etc., and or when fake information is being presented, or when they're not getting the information they think they should based on the normalcy patterns, like your biometrics are being hacked or blocked or whatever. And you think, well, that's never going to happen. Think about high level stuff. Think about looking at enemy combatants. Think about looking at diplomats. Think about looking at ambassadors, heads of state, security checkpoints, security personnel. Think about the intelligence agencies looking at their own people. Liveness detection, oxygen and hemoglobin sensors. Well, that's standard on a phone at this point now. Standard on a watch. You got the infrared projecting light into your wrist. Infrared light or green light goes in and it measures everything about your blood. Take your pulse, it can check your oxygen level, and it does so much more. They can actually measure glucose with that as well. Even though it's probably not, I don't know if it's available yet in the Apple products. I don't wear that stuff, so couldn't tell you. Heartbeat, yes. Pupil dilation, absolutely. And more. Liveness detection. Intrinsic properties, multi-layer fingerprint. That sounds interesting. Multi-layer fingerprint. Color, texture. Electrical resistance. Now, what do you think electrical resistance is doing here as a biometric feature? We're talking about biometrics here. Electrical resistance. When we start looking at wideband again, I'm going to show you ultra wideband high impedance sensors. And I'm going to show you again ultra wideband that's used in medical imaging and medical diagnostics that does things like measure your electrical impedance through your organs and your bones and your muscles. It literally measures the electrical properties. Ultra wideband can do this. Ultra wideband technology can do this. Wi-Fi and ultra wideband, micro impulse radar and ultra wideband. This stuff is in everything. Google Soli, yes. Ultra wideband. All your new phones, ultra wideband. They're even advertising ultra wideband with the new 5G networks. And these are like form factors for phased array antennas with multiple elements. It's a nickel with antenna elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A 9x9 stack. What was that? 81 antenna elements, the size of a nickel for ultra wideband interface. And I'll show you as time goes on. We go back into wideband. They can measure the two terms are escaping me. The dielectricity and the permittivity, the conductivity and the permittivity, basically, which make up dielectric properties. Your tissues are dielectric. The FCC has dielectric measurements for all of the tissues: brain, heart, smooth muscle, bone, fat, everything, organs, all of it. and you could, I'll just show you rather than, it's not on this document. So let's just find it in real time. FCC dielectric properties. And what I'm going to show you here is body tissue dielectric parameters for the FCC. They use this stuff for cell phones. So 1.9 gigahertz, otherwise known as 1900 megahertz. And here are the dielectric parameters computed according to the four-Kolkol model described in compilation of the dielectric properties of body tissues at RF and microwave frequencies. 1900 megahertz, 1.9 gigahertz, standard cell phone transmission. And what you see here is all the different tissues and their permittivity and conductivity. Cartilage, cerebellum, cerebrospinal fluid, cornea, eye tissue, fat, gallbladder, kidney, heart, lung, muscle, skin, ovaries, stomach, spleen, testes, uterus, white matter, gray matter, tongue, thyroid, and they have stuff down here. Permittivity and conductivity right here. Permittivity and conductivity for tissues, average for the brain, skull, muscle, on and on and on. And I'm spending time on this for a specific reason. And it's this idea of electrical resistance. It's a very generic term, and it goes back to this WASH program. And when I was talking to you about the screens as one example, warfighter analytics using smartphones for health. Your phones have proximity sensors that emit capacitive fields beyond just the screen. They actually have antennas in them that literally emit an electric field around it. So the phone understands if it's near a table, if it's on a couch, if it's in your hand, if it's on your body. If so, how is the phone oriented around your body? And the reason this is done is so that the device understands where it's at in the environment. And another reason it's done, and it's in some of the patents, is so that the device understands if it's near tissue, that it needs to manage the radio antennas so as to not exceed the FCC requirements for specific absorption rate. How much power can be transmitted into the tissue of a person before it's out of compliance? Meaning that it's going to heat up your tissues and cause cellular damage strictly and exclusively through a rise in temperature, literally cooking your cells and your tissues. That's one of the very few requirements or restrictions from the FCC is based on thermal changes in the body, and they measure that as a specific absorption rate. So on we go with Project Odin. There's not a lot, like I said, with Project Odin. It's very, very unfortunate. This is their broad agency announcement for Project Odin, biometric presentation attack detection. We kind of went through it. Basic, right? Take a sample of a person. It's called a physical sample. It's done with a sensor, passes through electronics. It goes through software and it cross-references with a database, and then you get results. So it is processed the same way data is moved around the internet. You put data in a phone, it's a sample, data sample. It's picked up by a sensor, right? Sensor is the screen on your phone, which we looked at from the WASH program and the electric field sensing and all that stuff. It passes through the electronics in the phone, something like an email, a text message, or whatever, or a command like scroll on a social media feed, or play on a YouTube video, or fast forward or rewind, or a like or dislike. All right. It goes to a recognition engine in a database to understand what it is the user is trying to do. Talking about just data at this point. And then something happens. The device shows you that a change has been made. It went to the next song, went to the next YouTube video. Your email was sent, your text was sent. The scroll actually happened, your feed scroll as you're scrolling on something like Twitter or Gab or whatever, Facebook. But in this case, it's biometrics. And they're looking at trying to understand what biometric spoofing is. And that's really what this project is about. Biometric modalities of interest: face, finger, and iris. Face, finger, and iris. So these are the sensors, if you will, that we commonly understand, right? You remember the iPhones, you had your fingerprint to get into your phone. I have a phone. It's an Android phone. I use a fingerprint to log in. It also has face scanning technology with an infrared. Most phones have both of those modalities or methods today. These programs are already close, right? The agency announcements they're done. They've got the candidates they're looking for to refine this type of technology. Let's see what else is in here for cool graphics. It's not. So here's another one. In scope, real-time live capture, fingerprint, face, or iris. What's out of scope for this particular project? Just this project, Odin. DNA, voice, gait, ear, latent fingerprint, digital file, including digital manipulations, etc. And I think we're gonna move on. So there are subcategories, and we'll highlight them briefly. Underneath Odin, there is Project Thor and Project Loki. And one is basically to counter the other. So they set up the program so that they build the technologies, and then they try to spoof, hack, or break the technologies with another program. And again, like I said, there's not a lot of information put out from Iarpa about these programs because these are very, very valuable programs. Yeah, Thor Performer. Yeah, it's not saying specifically here what it's trying to do. Let's just move forward because I've got some information on this. Is Project Thor. And here's a broad agency announcement for Project Thor, 68-page document. You can find all this stuff in the show notes if this stuff interests you. These are interesting reads, not to necessarily like word for word, but to kind of break down it, because you get some really good information here. They want cloud compatibility, public access to results, animal use, human use. Sometimes you can find organizations that they make awards to, and when you start looking through these projects, you can find contract numbers and search the web for the contract numbers. That's how I found this WASH program. I'd seen this contract, looked at this contract as a result of finding this contract in a patent that I was reading, and it said this patent, government has rights to use of this particular patent. I forget what it was at the time. And it was funded under a project, a contract awarded through this particular contract number. And so I searched this contract number and I come up with this: warfighter analytics using freaking smartphones. Without actually engaging the use of a smartphone, they can start extracting your physiological and cognitive processes while the damn thing's in your freaking pocket. So Thor, let's see what it says here about Thor. The goal of the program is to utilize presentation attack detection. So it is literally just going to be it's a rehash of what we looked at a high level. So we're not going to look at it in too much detail. The other one was Loki, and there's nothing here on Loki. And you can search online and really dig into what Thor and Loki are. I mean, the people have written articles about them, their interpretations of them, but it is what it is. It's basically building biometric collection platforms, right? The whole thing. being able to sample and then being able to run it through data fusion, data analytics to come up with a meaningful result that's accurate. And then to counter that, to be able to mask and then understand it's been masked or modified. When you think about the intelligence agencies, they would want full spectrum dominance over this technology. And the point of saying that is really for this purpose, to be able to understand whether or not you're looking at accurate biometrics. That's one thing. But to put operatives in another country and give them a device that masks their biometrics from that country's ability to collect your biometrics, that's a whole nother set of tools. That's a whole nother toolkit. And on top of that, to be able to deploy biometric masking and then spoof the other country or the adversary's ability to understand that it's fake biometric information, that's protecting your asset. You put an asset somewhere, you mask their biometrics, and the way that you mask it fools any adversary's ability to collect the biometrics, while at the same time allowing them to think they may be collecting the biometrics so that you don't tip them off and that those biometrics are real. Think about the complexity of that. You're gonna embed somebody in another country, for example. You're going to protect their biometrics, and you're going to provide ongoing sets of biometrics so that you don't tip off the adversary that you're blocking real biometrics. When you think about how a country or an intelligence organization is looking for infiltrators, how they would look for behavior characteristics, actions, mannerisms, statements, emotions, anything that would tip them off to somebody not being loyal to their interests, whether it be an American interest or a Russian interest or a Chinese interest or a British interest or an Australian interest. All countries would have a desire to be able to read somebody and take information in about that person that they could not control, that the person themselves cannot control. Heartbeat, respiration, pupil dilation, stress level, emotional response to stimuli, to see whether or not they are in alignment with that particular country or that country's interests or the intelligence apparatus interests. So be able to mask that and put your operatives somewhere else and be able to mask their information and feed false information out without being detected. That's modern. This is modern day, cloak and dagger shit. That's why these programs exist. So we're going to move on. Scientific advances to continuous insider threat evaluations, on the note of trying to understand who your adversary is and whether or not you have infiltrators, intelligence agencies watching intelligence agencies, spying on spies, spies who spy on spies, right? The SITE program is focused on modeling and forecasting the performance of the automated portion of an insider threat detection enterprise. Whoa. Detectors, indicators, and algorithms in detecting users who satisfy analysts' specified definitions of potential threats. 60-day stand down with the military comes to mind in order to root out domestic extremism. Potential threats. For example, users who are substantially dissatisfied with work, strongly object to certain policies, actively engaged in espionage activities, proactively hiding undeclared sources of income, etc. Do you see how these things could be put together? Biometric information. How are you feeling when you do your taxes? Now, if your computer and your phone was able to actually sense, right? If you put, you put down that you donated 4 sets of sheets and a couch and a 50-inch screen TV and a couple extra shoes, and you did really donate those sweaters, but they weren't exactly cashmere. But when you did your taxes, the cashmere sweaters give you a $14 return instead of a $7 return for some piece of shit cotton sweater. So you put down the cashmere. Can you imagine the Orwellian nature of this kind of technology being used while you do something like file your taxes by yourself online instead of going to a tax person? What about in a fascist world where you do go to a tax person and that tax guy is trying to hook you up? And the system, the overarching system, is able to understand and read that that tax preparer is literally lying during their tax preparation. And as a result of that, their company gets audited or you get audited. What would the IRS, for example, do with toolkits like this? Now, they're built for government/intelligence agency activities. But as we're seeing unfold at a rapid breakneck speed, all of these technologies, all of these techniques are being turned inwardly on domestic populations. America is not exclusive to this. And folks, it's done and it's rolled out through things like Nielsen and Effectiva. Those kind of marketing. Oh, it was right here. FCC dielectric tissues. Right here. What we looked at the other day. Analysis of marketing and entertainment effectiveness using the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and/or effector data, and the partnerships that exist. The partnerships that exist between companies like Nielsen and Google and Twitter and on and on and on. I'll show you here as this document loads. I covered this in detail twice now. And here it is. Nielsen, Facebook, using ambient wireless radio energy to power your device and remotely access your device, remotely turn on your cameras, remotely turn on your microphones, remotely utilize your antennas, your sensors, extract your emails, your phone contact lists, look at everything on your phone, your stored pictures, your videos, everything can be remotely activated without a battery. And that is lined out in this patent right here, US 9246554B2. And there are other associated patents that talk about the same thing with Facebook. There's a little family of them. I think there's 3. Back to Nielsen, though. Nielsen is now in the cloud. It's using AI. It's partnered here with Facebook, Twitter, Nielsen and Google join forces. Microsoft and Nielsen, Nielsen and Twitter, Snapchat and Nielsen and China Alibaba. And this is a marketing and advertising company that has a huge neuroscience division. And we looked at that in detail. And ways they can do it. They have patents. Here it is right here. A system and a method for gathering and analyzing biometric user feedback, your biometric information, and social media applications. And it talks about doing this with your freaking smartphone. And this is the world we live in right now, folks. So back to what I'm really laying out for you are these technologies that, in my view, are now developed. These programs are closed and they're ongoing. This one was back in 2015. And like I said, when I started tonight or this morning, wherever you are, these are typically 3 to 4 year programs, sometimes longer. And this program is looking for dissidents, is really a good way to say that. Users who are substantially dissatisfied with their work, strongly object to certain policies, actively engage in espionage activities, proactively hiding undeclared sources of income. doing things like looking at your biometrics. Site will perform research to advance the practice of insider threat detection through 2 separate research thrusts. The first research thrust will develop a new class of automated indicators called active indicators and associated automated detection tools that are designed to detect espionage activities. So what they're talking about is using AI to run around across or over the internet to be able to understand and root out whatever is not approved of by the technocracy or the government. It's really a way to summarize this program. Current practice and research is heavily focused on passive indicators that monitor existing data sources for indicative behaviors. Active indicators introduce stimuli. Check this shit out. So you've got the passive stuff, camera staring at you, microphone listening to you, antennas probing you with electromagnetic energy, infrared light emitting diodes that are basically V-cell lasers that allow you access to your phone and provide you really cool augmented reality and depth perception and 3D spatial mapping with your phone that can also beam energy at you and interact with your physiology, right? Passive, what they would consider passive. Active indicators introduce stimuli into the user's environment that are designed to evoke a response that are far more characteristic of malicious users than normal users. What does that mean? I'm going to tempt you. I'm going to tempt you. That's what this means. We flagged you because you're exhibiting tendencies of being an untrusted citizen. And so we are going to present you with information or with stimuli and then measure and monitor your response to confirm or corroborate our suspicions of you being a domestic terrorist. Active indicators introduce stimuli into the user's environment. Now, how can that be done? Into the user's environment. What does that look like? And the rabbit hole on that one, folks, goes very deep. Very, very deep. Could they introduce this stimuli through another person? How deep does the rabbit hole really go? Could they stimulate another person to then engage, do, or interact with you and measure and monitor your response? Now, we understand that they could change your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed or present some type of a targeted advertisement or a stimuli, right? And measure and understand what you're going to do with that as you're presented with it. But how deep does the rabbit hole go? Could they stimulate another person to engage with you? They already do it without using remote, no contact technologies. It's called infiltration. So you've got the FBI, for example, have entire division programs that do nothing but go out and infiltrate organizations to quote unquote identify and root out, domestic terrorism or whatever, corporate fraud, tax fraud, banking fraud, where they embed people undercover to identify groups, people, organizations that are unfavorable to the state, that demonstrate these tendencies. Active indicators introduce stimuli into the user's environment, and to what degree that looks like is completely up to you. You can let your mind wander. It says here in this publicly available document, the unclassified version, a stimulus that suggests that a certain file searching behavior may be noticed, right, is likely to be ignored by a normal user engaged in work-related searches, but may cause a malicious user engaged in espionage to cease certain activities. So what they're getting at here is somebody's looking at stuff in a government database or a corporate database that's outside of their scope or their purview. So they send out a notifier going, hey, if you're not authorized to look at this stuff, you shouldn't be. It's against company policy or it's against government policy. And then they watch and see if the person who's accessing the files, they watch and see what they do. It's a very benign, very gentle way of looking at this kind of program. But if you think that they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars exclusively looking for people who are accessing the wrong types of files, I don't know what to tell you. If this program doesn't stop with studying people's file browsing behavior on a local server. It's not where this program ends. This is just an example. So here's where we're going to browse some of these proposals here. Lockheed Martin was an example. Insider threat product area lead. And so what this diagram here shows you is basically it's using AI, machine learning, data analytics, right, to understand the evaluation of employees. Attributes, behaviors, and actions. Data fusions form large, disparate enterprise systems. Counterintelligence analysts define models. It can drill down for further investigation, discovering new information through automated link analysis. So what does this look like? Disparate data sources, system access, network traffic logs, data access to logs, file download logs, how you entered and left the network, behavioral, human resource information, security information, travel information, phone records, compliance and ethics. So what is this really looking like? This is scraping digital data, both internal and public information, and looking with data analytics, AI, machine learning, to understand if the data that you're trying to protect is being accessed, and if so, is that access being used for things that you don't want it to be used for, like communicating with a foreign government or a foreign entity and sharing private information. Being able to look at human resource information, which gives private information, where you live, potentially your emergency contact, what your employment history is, and on and on and on. Security information, do you hold clearances? Do you have a police record? What's your conviction? All of it. Travel information, where have you been the last 10 years? Do you frequently go to Iran? Do you travel overseas to the EU somewhere all the time? Do you go to China? Phone records? Personal phone records? Compliance and ethics. Understanding what makes you tick. That physiologic and cognitive analysis that allows them to understand your compliance and your ethics. All fused together to identify things like domestic extremism, folks. Here's their agency announcement for this program, and I'm going to scroll through it quickly. I'm going to stop here for a minute because this is the first one we've come to so far that looks at these intelligence agencies. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence. You have the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, so DIA, NSA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. Army has intelligence, Navy has intelligence, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, DEA, Department of Treasury, Department of Energy, Department of State, and the CIA. And we now have the Space Force, which this was produced and put out before the Space Force was made. So these are the intelligence apparatus, or this is the United States intelligence apparatus, the public one anyway, that would benefit, any of these groups would benefit from these types of technologies. So you've got the military, the FBI, DEA, the Treasury, and the Department of Energy and Department of State. So it's everywhere, folks. It is absolutely everywhere. The Office of Smart Collection, that sounds fun. Advanced biometrics in real world conditions. Provide technologies for reaching hard targets in denied areas. Accurately locate high frequency emitters and low power moving emitters with a factor of 10 improvement in geolocation accuracy. We're looking at the SITE program at this point that deals with users who are substantially dissatisfied with their work, strongly object to certain policies, actively engage in espionage activities, proactively hiding undeclared sources of income, etc. That's what this is what we're looking at here. This is their broad agency announcement. Detecting and forecasting significant events. This is like future prediction. This is pieces of future prediction technology. Detecting and forecasting the emergence of new technical capabilities, early warning of social and economic crises, disease outbreaks, insider threats, and cyber attacks, probabilistic forecasts of major geopolitical trends and rare events. SITE program overview. Research into modeling and forecasting the performance of existing and proposed insider threat detection enterprises. A new class of indicators developing these things called active indicators, where they actually introduce stimuli into your environment and then see what you do. How far does that go before it's entrapment? Can they, as the FBI does, entrap people virtually in the cyberspace? Makes you wonder what psychological operations look like. This, when I look at this program, this SITE program, this is a tool in the PSYOP toolkit. This is talking about identifying, but couldn't you use the same technologies to actually push somebody in that direction? Could you radicalize somebody with these technologies by micro-targeting them with digital content, by introducing active stimuli, and then turn around and say, oh, look what they did? Meanwhile, you spent the last, 6 months or a year just slowly dripping, feeding information, right? Dripping information out to a person or a group of people. Slowly changing their position or their perspective until they are moved into the realm of being a dissatisfied citizen by your own definition. What's the difference between that and the FBI walking somebody all the way up to the point of actually committing a crime, providing them with guns and bombs and other contacts and that kind of stuff under the guise of rooting out terrorism? What's the difference? When I submit to you, the difference is there is none. They're just different ways to approach the same objective. Let's move on because we are running low on time. Mosaics. This is another interesting one. I was going to do a whole show just on mosaics. I'm not, because the idea of this is to illustrate for you this partnership between the corporate environment and government that is underlying these new technologies that ultimately understand you better than you do and will recreate you in the virtual space and present that recreation, that facsimile of you, to others. And another layer to this is, what does an AI assistant look like in 10 years? And it's going to go beyond the phone, and it's going to just become part of you. The AI assistant will be another layer of discussion that you have with yourself, your own internal monologue with artificial stimuli applied. And it will be sold as a convenience and as a way to have greater productivity. That is where these technologies are going. But they have to understand a person before they can interact with and manipulate a person. They have to understand them first. So we're step by step. So mosaics. Selecting and evaluating a workforce. Listen to this stuff. Selecting and evaluating a workforce that is well suited for the psychological and cognitive demands of the diverse positions across the intelligence community. So this is the IC community, intelligence community, looking at themselves, is an important and persistent need. This is growing in importance as the pace and complexity of the challenges facing the intelligence community workforce grow and expand. Methods that enhance our ability to evaluate an individual's psychological drivers, cognitive abilities, and mental wellness and resilience will enable improved capabilities to select the right person for the right job, evaluate and help maintain optimal performance throughout their career, and better understand and anticipate changes in an individual that may impact their work effectiveness, productivity, and overall health and wellness. It sounds so loving, doesn't it? What this really looks like to me is the intelligence community wanting to keep tabs on themselves, down to what makes you tick. Your biometrics tell a great deal about you. Psychological drivers, cognitive abilities, mental wellness is what they're after here. To address this challenge, the Mosaic program aims to take advantage of multimodal, mobile, worn and carried sensors. Oh, you mean like headphones and a watch and a phone? Right? And the corresponding data to enable the measurement of an individual in their environment throughout their daily activities using an aggregate of behavior, physiology, social dynamics, physical location, and proximity, as well as other novel data sources. Research in this program will aim to establish convergent validity of multimodal signals, any and all sensors fused together, folks, across a range of researcher-defined contexts and over time to enable accurate and personalized evaluations. It is anticipated that research team, So we will look at some of these programs here. We're going to breeze through these. Mosaics, multi-year research program. When was this thing put out? 2016 is when this happened. So what they're not looking for in this program is, here, let's build a better watch. Right. This is another one. I got to look this one up. Detection and computational analysis of physiological signals, DCAPS. It's a Darpa program. Workplace wearables. Check this out. Harvard Business Review, September 2013 issue. And this is the quote out of it. About 90% of companies now offer wellness programs, some of which encourage employees to use a Fitbit. And other devices that measure the quantity and intensity of their workouts, and to employ simple visual and motivational tools to track their progress and help sustain their engagement. Because these programs are administered by third-party providers, employers can't see individuals' metrics, but the aggregate analytics give them robust insight about the correlations between wellness, job satisfaction, and financial performance. The wellness program provider CareWise, whose members use Fitbit, has found that the healthcare costs of highly engaged participants rise just 0.7% annually compared with 24%. So less than 1% compared with 24% with less engaged participants. Because you wear a Fitbit, they can understand this about you. Detecting daily stress. This is a Mosaics program. Intelligence community wanting to understand your heart rate, your electrodermal activity, which is that skin conductance stuff, and cubic. We got to figure out what cubic is. Toward accurate, non-intrusive recollection of stress levels using mobile sensing and contextual recall. What else is in here? Passive and unobtrusive sensing. So check this out. Passive and unobtrusive sensing, or excuse me, persistent, not passive, persistent, unobtrusive, and passive sensing. What do we have? We've got wearable shirt that's probably got sensors on it. No, I think it's this thing on his arm here, Hexoskin. So this would be like a digital tattoo. You've got a smartwatch. You have a tablet of some type. You have headphones that look like they're audio as well as something with sensors on them. Smartphone is another version of a digital tattoo. Laptop, another type of smartwatch that's basically just an emotion monitor. Affectiva, right here. Affectiva. We looked at that company a few episodes ago. They take this information that they can extract from your body with the electrodes or the light or the antennas that exist in these devices. They all have them. I can show you in the Apple headphone patents where they actually have an infrared sensor in the Apple headphones to take your heartbeat. It's part of the Apple Health stuff. The AirPods, for example, have an infrared emitter in the damn headphone that then can shine light on your tragus, which is the little flap on the front where the earbud goes in, and the little flap there. It's in the front. And it's either aligned to the tragus or it's in alignment with the speaker, which is designed to go into your ear canal. And it's an infrared, little infrared laser that's able to understand your blood flow and your heart rate. It can take your vitals, if you will, from your headphones. And then you've got all this other stuff here. So let's see. You get the idea, right? This Mosaics program is designed to use mobile worn sensors and other mobile sensors to extract everything about you. Physiological profile, psychological profile, motivation levels, emotional content, all of it. This is an intelligence agency program known as Mosaics, utilizing commercially available devices to understand psychological drivers, cognitive abilities, and mental wellness. The same things that Affectiva and Nielsen and others look at for marketing purposes, that they turn around and sell to corporations, and that they partner with other corporations to have a global footprint. Nielsen stuff fits inside a smartwatch. Oh, that's nice. Great. Alibaba, China, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, utilizing AI and cloud infrastructure. How does the intelligence apparatus actually gather this stuff? Well, if they're using commercially available devices, it means that they're running on these public networks, or they're running on public networks that might be encrypted. So if you're in the intelligence community and you get issued a smartwatch, it might be on its own little private, higher level security network, but it's still running on the internet. It's still running through the big tech architecture, which consists of the cloud and the actual internet. These things are managed by telecommunications companies and big tech: Facebook, Google, Twitter, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and on and on and on, with commercially available devices. Laptops, phones, smartwatches, wearable devices, earphones. It's fascism, folks. In a nutshell, we're looking at fascism. Here's some interesting programs. Adaptive immersion technologies. So I just literally pulled this off of the sidebar here. You can see the sidebar, all of these PDF attachments. They're interesting to read. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on each of them, but some of them stood out to me. What this is really saying is it's able to take a pool of people and understand based on this sensor extraction, all the sensors that are around us, they can extract that and then start profiling people very, very quickly and understanding unique characteristics of an individual using machine learning and algorithms for complex pattern recognition in training and performance. Novel methods for measuring human performance and resilience. Developing a database of associated knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics for intelligence community domains. Using analytics and visual cognition. These are tools, folks. Aptima. Check this out. Provides innovative approaches to measuring the state of teams and organizations through a combination of multimodal sensors, all the wearable crap we looked at, and the mobile devices around us, etc., advanced algorithms, and team theory. And what I'm going to show you here is this visual depiction where they're all connected, but they're showing different stuff, right? Detected team members, communications, and interactions. You've got a mobile device. You've got something on the body here. You've got something this guy has in his hands, maybe. This guy's dealing with a computer. What are they looking at here? Team communications, email interactions, chat interactions. Looks like something. It says IR here. I'm not really sure. Badge. It might be. I don't know. Vocal voice interaction. And it's really just this diagram of taking whatever sensor information they can, putting it through machine learning and algorithms, etc., and coming up with useful information, right? Overall team performance. How well are you doing? What else is in this document? Future research possibilities. And I want you to think of the Arab Spring here when you think of the use of a platform like Twitter and mobile devices. And after this extensive discussion at this point tonight of being able to, or this morning, wherever you are, being able to take something like a cell phone and extract information about a person using the sensors. And it's not just a camera and a microphone. It's the electric field sensors, it's the antennas, it's the accelerometer, it's the magnetometer, it's compass, it's everything. It's the whole package. Being able to understand a person, cognitive ability, physiologic ability, psychological profile, likes, dislikes, emotions, all of it. Remember, Arab Spring, right? Check this out. Obtain a more complete understanding of individuals and teams, integrating physiological, psychological, behavioral, sociological, and systems signals, utilizing unobtrusive metrics, provide real-time analysis for enhancing team effectiveness. What if you wanted to enhance civil disobedience? What if you wanted to enhance riots? What if you wanted to enhance or incite or induce the overthrow of Egypt? What would be the difference? You have the same platform could do the same thing. You just change the goal, change the objective. Look at the metrics, make the changes that you need, introduce that active stimuli stuff that we were looking at through the SITE program, SCITE program, we just looked at a minute ago, to introduce the stimuli to find the people that you need or that are able to, or that you can manipulate to do whatever it is you want done, like overthrow a country like Egypt, the Arab Spring, using a platform like Twitter, which is probably just a piece of what was really done in that digital space. To utilize the platform of Twitter doesn't mean that Twitter's guilty. What it means is that you're utilizing Twitter as a means to deploy information. It is the use of AI, machine learning, and analytics, and the collection of this type of information, physiological, psychological, behavioral, sociological, and system signals, fusing all that together to then introduce active stimuli over a platform like Twitter to incite people to do something. And an example I'm providing you, it is the Arab Spring, aka in one of many, right, the overthrow of Egypt. Here is a systems performance monitor of a single individual. Let's see what this says. Single individual, what they're looking at. I see looks like radio here. Radio is an interesting technology. That's something DARPA is working on. And what that is it's looking at the natural electromagnetic signatures that are emitted from a person. Biological, radio. And there's not a lot of information out there about it. But radio ties into quantum, and it ties into this idea of quantum measurements of people, in addition to the run-of-the-mill electromagnetics. So your EKG, your brain waves, different organs, your general electromagnetic signature. They can measure all this stuff, folks. And the radio ties into the quantum piece where they can magnetics and start looking at the quantum scale, what you're doing, what's going on with you at the quantum scale. In this case, this soldier here, is being monitored and evaluated. They're looking at radio, for example. They're tracking his eyes, looking at his voice stress, his breathing rate, his heartbeat, and they're getting an overall assessment of this individual using sensors. Keep in mind, this program, Mosaics, is the intelligence community looking at the intelligence community to understand work performance, the right placement and fit for personnel, understanding who gets promoted, who doesn't get promoted, who's motivated, who's not motivated, who has the right aptitude for particular tasks or functions, so that from a science-based, they can take a science-based approach, and I'm doing air quotes with my hands, a science-based approach to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the overall intelligence community. Using commercially available devices, mind you, things like a tablet, a smartphone, earphones, smartwatch, laptop, to extract measurable information from out of you, otherwise known as your biometrics. Biometrics. Georgia Institute of Technology, also under the Mosaics program, looking at social media, Twitter and Facebook use during a pregnancy period predicts the risk of postpartum depression. Twitter data predicts risk to major depressive disorders before childbirth, after childbirth. Interesting. Employing social media data to detect and predict risk to mental health. Modeling human behaviors from social media data. Computational analysis of social media language. Computational analysis of social media imagery. Computational analysis of social network structure. What? A social network structure? You mean like Facebook's? Here, check this out. This is a workup I did on the Facebook patent, the wireless backscatter where they can remotely power your device, right? And extract all your information, turn on your radios, turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, all that. Well, the social network, right, that they were just talking about, Georgia Tech, under this Mosaics program. While it's loading, I'll go back and I'll show you here. This right here, casual and predictive. No, it's right here. Computational analysis of social network structure. This little cluster here that looks like a bunch of neurons. Computational analysis of social network structure. This is straight out of a Facebook patent, and it is a social network structure. And it talks about user A and user B being friends, and that user B likes the company here. In the example, it's the Acme company, which user D worked at. User G also worked at that. User G also worked at a school. Going back to user B likes this particular location. User B cooked this particular food. User B watched this particular movie. Social network information from a company like Facebook. And if you just, for posterity's sake, those of you that have already seen this, bear with me. For posterity's sake, here's the patent. Using wireless radio to manage power consumption, where you don't need a battery. You could read this patent on your own. But the actual picture for this thing is here. It's image 13. It's the last image in this particular patent. It's right here. This is where I got the image from, which is strikingly similar to this computational analysis of social network structure. Keep in mind, this is Georgia Tech, or Georgia Institute of Technology, looking at social media to understand mental health, likelihood of postpartum depression as an example, right? And modeling human behavior from social media using things like looking at your social network, which consists of who you socialize with, where you go, where you work, who you work with, what they do, what your similar interests are, what you like to eat, what you like to drink, what you like to watch on TV, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. All stored at Amazon. Georgia Tech Research Institute. This is the software side, if you will. Get the data set. They look for what the policies are that they want to search for, because it's all flexible. We're looking for this, not that today. Tomorrow, we're going to look for that, not this. But today, we're looking at this, not that. Get the metadata extraction, and then get the specific features out of it. It's basically in a nutshell. So check this out. Sensor suite, physiological monitoring system, right? Georgia Tech Research Institute has several sensor groups, one of them working with the Army to develop a suite of sensors that can be used to monitor the state of a soldier, heart rate, acceleration, galvanic skin response, and skin temperature. Well, Google's radar can do all of this. Google's radar that's now available in the Pixel phones does all of this. It's just the radar. Georgia Tech has access to a large variety of sensors that can be explored for the Mosaic project. These will be combined with Georgia Tech's cognitive reasoning approaches and cognitive psychology task analysis for Mosaic. Unbelievable. Darpa, also listed in here. Georgia Tech works with, they're a government research school. They do other things, but they're a major government research school. It says here, our team is using fMRI analysis to explore human responses to narratives with particular characteristics. We designed a narrative composition prototype using case-based reasoning, learning, and planning, augmented by heuristics to provide domain knowledge, constraints, and adaptation capabilities. So not only are they using, cell phone sensors and watches and things like that, but they're also using like serious medical equipment that has a proven track record of understanding what's going on with a human. And I read that to you for this purpose, and it is to illustrate for you, or at least put the idea in your mind, that they are going to, or they are comparing and contrasting how accurate commercial grade technology is when compared to proven medical grade tech. So an EEG sensor on the head that's used in a medical setting to understand Alzheimer's, epilepsy, studies on depression, insomnia, all of it, like the whole thing, the electrode, 100 or 200 of them on your head, take an hour to set up, and then they measure your brain while you sleep or whatever, versus using something like a wristwatch to understand what's going on in your brain, or earphones to understand what's going on in your brain. How accurate is it? Well, how would you benchmark that? You would benchmark it with medical. That's why I read this to you, fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, common medical procedure that's used to understand what's going on with tissues in the body. And at this juncture right here, what they're saying here is that they're looking at it to measure and understand human responses to narratives. Human responses to narratives. I can read you a story or tell you about, I'll tell you a Muslim story, then I'll tell you a Christian story, and I'll measure your brain with an fMRI while I tell you each of these stories, and I can understand what your religious ideology is. Are you partial to this versus that? Just an example. And we keep going. Clever mind, look at this. Facial recognition, Face ID technology, facial tracking. Interview anyone, anywhere, on demand via video. Use deep learning to compare individuals against known outcomes. The result, an on-demand diagnostic platform with superhuman accuracy. 600 plus customers. Discovery, Dow Jones, Amex, Qantas, Red Bull, Mercedes-Benz, Delta, BASF, HBO, Carnival, Dunkin', McGraw-Hill, Vodafone, looks like MLB, and more. Deep learning analytics engine that uses machine learning to extract and understand behavior attribute patterns derived from structural and unstructured digital interactions. Insights build data models by linking digital interactions, including audio, video, text, and natural language, to outcomes such as job performance, turnover, and safety. They are looking at outcomes such as job performance, turnover, and safety by scraping digital information. Now, if this isn't creepy, I don't know what to tell you. This is creepy. And you say, oh, corporations can't do that. All they have to do is say, you know what, you're not the best fit. Sorry, you don't get the promotion. Or we found somebody else for this job, found somebody else that was more qualified. And they may not be. It might just be an AI program that gives a potential employer the top 10 after the AI analyzes you by scraping your digital data, looking at your audio, video, text, and natural language, your structured and unstructured digital interactions, social media, everything. May have nothing to do with your qualifications for the job, but more so with your ideology. And from a corporate perspective, you could argue, well, I want somebody I know that's intrinsically motivated. I want somebody I know that's on time. I want somebody that I know has a particular amount of cognitive ability. Very open-ended type of things. The last example being a specific type of cognitive ability. And to be able to get that, you could argue that you need access to what this person does. And the easy way to do that is to look at the online data, scraping digital information. But it's violating your privacy. But you could turn around and say the company is paying third-party neuroscience advertisers who partner with Facebook, Google, Twitter, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, and others to gather your information, which you already consented to giving so that you could use the platform. So are they really breaking the rules? Do you see how this whole fascism thing is taking shape? Developed by the government, for the government, deployed through a commercial application for consumption, consumer use, which is then turned around and used by employers and government to regulate what happens to an individual or groups of individuals in a society. Case in point would be what's going on with the potential purge of the military, the ongoing purge of the military. And it's going to make its way to corporate America. It already is. People are being fired for being Trump supporters. Where are they getting that? They're getting it from their social media. They're already doing this. So how easy is it going to be to do this in an interview setting? Oh no, COVID. I mean, just study your face and you can video chat. And I'm gonna do a cursory background check on you. And in the process of doing that, I'll just log into my monthly subscription to a group, a company that uses marketing and advertising technology from a company that partners with a global big data company, and I can get all of your information passed from one person or one company or one entity to another, until I get a nice, clean little dossier about you. Are you Democrat or Republican? Do you identify as male, female, or other? Do you have children? If so, how old? What schools do they go to? Are you married? What's that like? What's your disposition of your spouse? What's your spouse's disposition of you? What are you teaching your children? What do you like to do on your free time? They will know whether you're telling the truth on an informal interview or not. They will be able to circumvent things like health questions. They just get it from third party. And you already provided your consent because you wanted to use a platform, for example, like Facebook or Twitter. And we will stop because we are out of time. So I will bid you good day. See you next time.